All right, my friends, welcome to the Awaken Beauty podcast. This is Cassandra, your organic beauty, positive mind management, and clinical hypnotherapist. And today, let me just tell you, I've been waiting to get this man on this podcast for quite some time, and I had to lure him. And you're just going to be so impressed with, number one, some projects that we're kind of working together on, and an explanation of this transition of what's going on within the creator economy, within the world at large right now. And so before we dive in, I'm going to welcome you into who Dr. Owen Muir is. And so my friend, Dr. Owen, is a dual boarded child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, and is at the forefront of really bringing transparency to healthcare payment ecosystems. He specializes in the treatment of a wide variety of personality and mood disorders, and truly looks through a lens of a holistic path for his clients and patients. Owen is the CEO of Sphere, an insurance technology company focused on improving outcomes and increasing the accessibility of behavioral health treatments, such as those found at Brooklyn Minds. I'm so excited to really share Owen's wealth of knowledge, from everything we're going to explore today to a little bit about Web 3.0, his position as medical director with Astromojis, psychedelics, and what lies ahead in our future as mental health professionals and creators. And as a creator, he's that too. He is an expression through his music. He's a podcaster and also a father. So Owen, thanks so much for taking a slice out of your day and being with us here today. How are you?
I am okay. As with many founders, these things change quickly. So I got to have my exit from Sphere, which is awesome. So
you did?
Yeah, I have to
you just updated your bio in real time.
All right. So that was a company I founded with David Belinsky, who continues to run it, and essentially don't do too many things at once. And so when the opportunity came to step down from that role and let other people, take the thing I built to the next level, I said yes. And the same soon will be true of Brooklyn Minds.
Awesome.
Because essentially, I think there's an ethics behind how we spend our time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I feel a lot of weight about is essentially like, am I doing stuff that's going to help the most people? And there are plenty of things that, like, I could do that are going to be helpful-ish to some people, or really helpful to one person. That's not too hard. But I do feel that getting to be the most helpful to the most people matters.
Mm-hmm.
And that overlaps nicely with the concept of scalability in venture capital. But I think Web3 turned a lot of how we think about this stuff on its head. And it's one of the reasons I'm so excited about it, is because it presents new paradigms around ownership, around community, around financial mechanisms. And, in a strange way, it takes all the things I have done with my life and brings them together quite nicely. So I am wildly excited for the ability to help get more people access to stuff that'll be helpful in ways they'll understand is helpful, because frankly, most of the help that we try to, arrogantly we assume will be helpful isn't that good. Or not for the people who are getting it. So that's one of the things I've struggled with, and I'm looking for meaningful solutions to.
Yeah, when I really think about you, Owen, you and I met you first on Clubhouse, and you are such a great creator, and you hold such awesome spaces around, yes, now tech, but also mental health, and really answering questions to the audience at large. I mean, you you really are this bridge with one foot into the world that you've been in and your training is, and then also bridging it into this ecosystem and what we'll talk a little bit more about today with Web.3, because most people, I mean, 3% of people understand even what an NFT is. And so we'll kind of open that up at large, but we are so in need of this bridge of really thoughtful, well-informed practitioners to safely and responsibly start to shift this Web 2.0 into the Web 3 ecosystem. And you and I have had many conversations, and it's not necessarily stripping and decentralizing psychiatrists so that they can do whatever they want with their license. But, you have such a vast background of understanding insurance, understanding how money is deciphered, sending it to practitioners such as yourself, and how are we actually giving care and the best care to the client and patient. And so you've really started to open a lot of this up. And, in your bio, can you say a little bit before we kind of jump into some of these projects that we're working on, where you see healthcare as it was and where you see healthcare as it is and where we're going as far as that goes. And then we'll kind of jump into some other things.
Sure. I'm a miracle of science. I was born to the first man to have a vasectomy reversed after 12 years.
Wow.
And my mother was the medical editor of the biomedical reports of the Apollo space program.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
sciencey mom, dad who benefited from science, but he was a salesman. And she runs an arts nonprofit.
Mm-hmm.
And a very sharp lady, Vita Muir. Has run a jazz festival for many years. I worked with her for about 10 years on that.
Wow.
And my first job out of college was at a recording studio in Manhattan, at Sony Music Studios, which is no longer a studio, but is still a record label. I think record labels are kind of the perfect, old model financial system, right?
Mm-hmm.
We find a way to make it as complicated as is humanly possible to explain why we're taking all of your money for the work that you do.
Right.
Right. So artists walk away like, royalties will be 5%, except there's a packaging fee and your A&R rep gets a point. And at the end of the day, Spotify, which is a fine company, work with Spotify, did a keynote for Spotify. I think they're a great place to work for a number of reasons for their employees. For the artists who are on there, I mean, they solved for a problem, which was an old world problem, which was how do we, get record labels to agree to stream music? And it turns out the answer.
So, by the way, if you get 200,000 of your songs aired, you get $1 for that song.
Right. So screwing artists more is a reliable way to get labels to say yes. But we don't need labels, and we don't need that.
Right.
Like it's a fine and very extractive model. If what you're trying to optimize for is profits made from artists by not paying them anything and making them do other things with their life so they can afford to have their music streaming on your service, whatever it is. Not just sing, any of these things. This made sense in the context in which it evolved, essentially. And healthcare is similar, right? We have how can we make the most money off of doctors who want autonomy and to do the right thing? God, awful for profits, right? Hospital seems like a place where care happens, so that doesn't sound too profitable. And if people get less care because they're healthy, then we're not gonna shucks. So we have all these perverse incentives,
right?
And as a practicing physician, when I went back to train in medical school, went to the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry. Dentistry is a great example of why things are not as they always seem. There's no dental school. Dentistry is in the name because George Eastman, who gave the money for the school, had bad teeth.
Wow.
And said, I want dentistry to be in the name. And they said, we don't have a dental school. What are you talking about? It's like, do something dental and I'll give you the money. So they made a postgraduate dental research facility. And I went to a medical school called the University of Rochester School of Medicine and Dentistry, which has no actual dental school.
Interesting.
Postgraduate dental research in one of the finest medical schools in the world.
Wow.
Went to North Shore LIJ, Northwell, whatever the hell they're calling it now, Hofstra. It's literally my general psychiatry residency is now The
Oh,
Hofstra, the Barbara and David Zucker Hofstra Northwell School of Medicine General Psychiatry Residency Program at the Zucker Hillside Hospital. That's the full name of the training program. So there are unintended consequences to doing things the way we've been doing them. And some of them are as benign and silly as long names. And some of them are not. Some of them are people, getting ever sicker and spending ever more on the process. And I didn't like that. And I am a psychiatrist, but I am an MD, right? I went to medical school and I see what suffering looks like across both mental health stuff, which I'm interested in, and the physical health stuff that comes when you can't take care of yourself because you're too impaired.
Yep.
And so that got me down the road of going like, well, why are these things so expensive? Why don't they want to pay for this? I get they don't want to pay for it, but why not? And the answers were complicated and didn't seem to need to be so complicated. And so that's kind of how I got to insurance, was going, why? And the answer is, well, we regulated it that way in the US at least. And the regulation is really simple. The law says for an health insurance company, they have a fixed profit margin. And I'm not sure if that's your Discord or mine. I'm going to mute.
I think it's yours. I turned mine off.
That's off now. God, bye-bye Discord.
No
a fixed profit margin. Now I have 2 children. They're almost 6. And if I tell them they can have 20% of a bowl of ice cream, how big of a bowl are they going to choose?
Right.
I mean, if you're good at eating ice cream, it's going to be a big bowl.
Right. And
United Healthcare and Cigna, Blue Cross, Aetna, they're the same. They just want a bigger bowl because they can only get 20% of any amount.
Yep.
And once you're there, if you accept that as part of the picture, everything else makes sense. So how can we make costs go up without it being obvious? Because obvious, I can't just say we want people to be sicker. That'd be gross. Right. Or I couldn't even say it to ourselves. Like who would wake up in the morning? Not enough people. There just aren't that many vampires in the world. But if you convince people they're trying to do something to help, and then you make it impossible for it to work, well, you've built a pretty robust organization. Yeah.
I think of the healthcare. I kind of see the corollary between government and healthcare and how we create all of these different sectors like czars in government. It's like, do we really need them? Well, we don't really need them, but we need to create more complication within the system. And then they never go away and they just complex the system more and it costs the whole system more. And, when we look at the last 2 years and where we're shifting, I really do believe that, and tell me if you agree, this is what we needed to really help both the practitioner and more so practitioners than necessarily MDs, because they have to figure out what they want to do. But the psychiatrists, et cetera. I mean, I have so many clients that are practitioners that just opted out. They restructured their taxes and they let themselves go of that whole system so that they could have more autonomy, get more money. And so one by one, I think we're seeing these practitioners start to opt out of the old systems because they're just not going to change.
And there's a certain degree of accepting the matrix there.
Right.
I like to say that the robots in the matrix were under ambitious. They just wanted to plug us in and use this as human batteries, and that seems rather benign.
Right.
Compared to Davita and Fresenius sucking our blood out of us. So they can
right.
pump it back in and suck it out all over again.
Right.
But do a bad enough job so you have to go to the hospital a bunch of times in the middle before you die of that level. And that's effed up.
Yep.
That is suffering at a level that is hard for people to imagine. And so they don't. And it's a lot easier to get it to happen endlessly and to charge a mind-blowing amount for that care.
Yeah. And we don't have the space and time for it right now, actually. I mean, we really look at, and you do a great amount of suicidal ideation, and everything from opiates gone up 40%, suicide. I mean, we just don't have that much margin right now to really reach to these individuals and really help them. So where do you plant yourself now? Because I love what Osmind is doing within the psychedelic industry. You've kind of gotten your foot into a little bit of some of the psychedelic infrastructure. Where are you loving being in the space right now? And where do you want to put your energy towards for good?
So I'm the principal investigator of a couple of trials.
Yep.
More coming with a company called Mind Medicine Incorporated,
Right.
the first publicly traded psychedelics company. And the work I do with them is primarily around artificial intelligence being used to create guidance and monitoring for clinicians who are administering psychedelic medicine
Right.
to increase safety and access.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, like there are a bunch of different compounds, but safe administration is going to have to be true across all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO, Rob Darrow, is great. The chief medical officer, Dan Carlin, is a brilliant, brilliant human and has been a dear friend for many years. And there are other really great innovative companies in the space. My wife, Carlene McMillan, works at Osmind, which is the operating system for mental health care in the future.
Just
And
one quick note there. I am so jealous of your guys' relationship because I want to marry my boss as well, meaning boss husband maybe, but you guys have such an awesome working relationship. And the fact that you guys are so head deep in such passion in the same things. I want to have a business with my future husband. So I just love it. Anyways, Carlene's a gem.
hard. It's also hard.
It is. Absolutely. You never turn it off.
It has gotten much better since
Good.
she started working at Osmind, and I don't do the same thing anymore. Like working together is better than working for one another.
Yeah.
Being a boss sucks, just generally. It's super stressful.
Totally.
I want to avoid that if I possibly can. And that's where decentralization is nice because I'm a big fan of history. And I think when we look at the history of democracies, ancient Athens, for example, Sparta, even most of the Athenian city-states, the ancient Greek city-states, they worked in a way that worked. Right?
Yep.
Rome lasted for a while. Didn't all go smooth, but they did have a democratic structure, or at least a democratic form structure for a long time, that allowed for the pattern over time is more people involved in governance of things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that makes cryptocurrency, I think, interesting and exciting is that it allows for shared decision making, and importantly, shared rewards from this decision making. So, right now we have this, California has a good example of this. They have this awful direct democracy situation where they can vote to vote for things all day long that have to be paid for, and then make a separate vote to never make the tax money to pay for them. And that goes badly. And the incentives are misaligned there. Like, no, I don't want to pay taxes. Yes, I want all the services. Well, that goes poorly.
Who pays for that?
All of us.
I think somebody's going bankrupt here. Yeah.
I mean, and so aligning, like there are decisions they didn't think about,
right,
that made that work less well.
Yep.
And when we think about how an NFT project functions, it's different. Mm-hmm. So we have this really, really interesting development where I'll take a project that's done quite well, Psychedelics Anonymous.
Yep.
The project that was really well thought out, and when the initial mint happened, it was 0.7 or whatever it was Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency for those new to that. And now the lowest price on those this morning when I looked was like 2.4 Ethereum.
Wow.
Equivalent of like $7,000 more dollars.
Yep.
That's bonkers.
Yeah.
The bonkers part is it's a community that can increase the value of itself. It is not reliant on it's good that they have good management of the project, but everyone who holds one of the things is essentially a shareholder in the value of the community. And if the community creates more value, then they own more. And that's not true when you have an insurance card. Right? Hopefully, for companies that are startups, they're stock options, that sort of thing, to make everyone have a stake, at least theoretically. But after a certain point, we get sick of that. We're like, why should everyone have a stake?
Yep.
I mean, like accredited investors, okay, people with already money, we can trust them. But like that guy working at the front, it just doesn't seem like he should have a stake.
Yeah, it reminds me of the book, The Infinite Game, or it might be The Finite Game, and it's, the infinite game. And this is what I equate Web3 and NFT projects and this whole decentralized ecosystem is that, you're there for the greater good. And the infinite game, it grows the community, but the ripple effect keeps moving. You can have secondary purchases. That same person is going to get that value to then come into the community. And there's really a long game there, where the finite game is what you're talking about. Some people win and a lot of people lose. And that is that old structure that people are so hungry to burn down to the ground. Now, it will still be there, but people have the opportunity to opt in to this Web3 ecosystem so that people understand, first and foremost, there's like a blockchain. And that blockchain is basically a ledger that, it records everything that happens so that there's, unlike, the insurance industry, there's full veracity of being able to see every single transaction and how it's paid. And then an NFT is a digital asset. It can be music, it can be art, it can be whatever that is, but it has they sometimes will have different rarities, and we'll talk about that with Astromojis next, but it has a significant value that, that comes from the heart of that creator, but it can't be duplicated. And so it increases the value and brings together a community to be a part of that. And they mint, some of them have so many of the project, and that's what makes it so attractable. And then backed into that community, there's utility. And so the token into the utility can be a wide number of things. So we can kind of talk maybe a little bit about Astromojis, where we're kind of really supporting right now. Because to me, honestly, Owen, it is such a great deep roadmap and it has such a great long game, but it's really bringing in others, practitioners into it to really start to understand how Web3 happens in this ecosystem. But maybe we can talk a little bit about how you met, whether it was Marwin or Aria, or how you kind of got introduced to the Astromojis and kind of what our bigger picture and what our passion is behind this project and what attracted you to it.
So the date was set up by my wife.
Okay.
She was on a podcast about NFTs because clearly this is the way to do that. Right now, like what we're doing right now is the future. Right. And they heard her and they talked to her, and she said, the person you should really talk to, in addition to me, is really probably Owen, because cool. This is the thing. And I had, the funny thing is Carlene and I both got into NFTs and cryptocurrency in kind of parallel, but not the same way. Mm-hmm. And I have tape of this, which is pretty funny, where she's like, what are you talking about? That sounds dumb. Then she's explaining like, well, no, it's a picture of a pickle. People pay for this pickle? Because I had no idea. And I ended up
fungible. Is it funge? Do you funge it? What's fungible about it? Yeah, it's pretty.
And so what happened for her, she got really interested in the community part, right? And communities are communities. They're groups of people get together and they function in ways that are similar enough. Right. They like group therapy, right? And for me, I was really interested in some of the kind of mechanistic stuff behind how this could modify how stuff is paid for and how we can solve that transparency problem. Mm-hmm. So I actually have a friend who's actually the roommate of one of my first transcranial magnetic stimulation technicians, Chris Hughes, who founded a company called ETH Trust. He took through an accelerator called Cellicamp and said, Owen, you should really apply to Cellicamp. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? I know nothing about cryptocurrency. I'm not even remotely a coder. He's like, yeah, we should do it anyway. I'm like, okay. So I got together some of my friends and colleagues who did know it enough to do this. And we got in. Out of 2,000 odd applicants, we were one of 36. And I was just like, well, that happened fast. Wow. Okay. And we ended up getting some grant support from the Cello Foundation to build out the open source stuff, which we're doing and deploying shortly. It's built. We just have to deploy it on mainnet. Cool. That lets you take a healthcare payment and make the information about it de-identified but public. So we know not who, but how much and to whom for what. And anyone can access that. And suddenly, and nobody needs to be involved in crypto on either side of the transaction. That's the cool part. Nobody needs to know they're using a blockchain. No one needs to know the payment has going through a blockchain. Nobody has any idea. They just know the money comes out of their bank account, goes into their bank account. And the process, we make it public. Do they have to say yes to it being public? No. Are we solving a regulatory problem for them? Yes, they actually legally, hospitals legally in the US have to make their prices public and don't. So we're saving them money by keeping the regulatory wolves at bay. We're also making pricing comparable. And I'm a psychiatrist. There's a law around mental health parity. You need to pay the same for mental health care as you do physical health care, which sounds great unless you hide what all the prices are. And then you could never compare. How could you know? So you make all of it public. And then suddenly comparing becomes very easy, et cetera. And so that was the first use case we came up with for our product, which is, the code is open source. People can use it all day long.
Right.
We're pairing it with other stuff to make it, easier. But I don't want to hide this from anybody. Please, God, make healthcare payments transparent. Anybody. And for NFT communities, there are people who are together as a community because they're interested in the thing. The thing is art. The thing is the mission of the community, et cetera. When I met the Astromoji's team, there are people who are interested in getting the regulation behind these things right. And so there were a lot of people like, mental health is great. Let's talk about mental health. Do you know anything about it? No. And let's keep it that way because that would mean a license. And that sounds complicated. Yeah, it is. Right? You're a clinical hypnotherapist. It means you can do the clinical hypnotherapy in the places where you're allowed to do that and not other places because that's what a license does. Right. So you have expertise, and at the same time to deploy that expertise, there's a lot of regulation to keep people safe, and there should be. And so, we see lots of conversations around depression, anxiety, my least favorite combination term. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that's the problem. And we see this in Silicon Valley funding things, right? Oh, we have a solution for depression, anxiety. Well, how do you know everyone who comes to the door has the thing you think they have? Yeah. But I'm a psychiatrist, and I can tell you, rarely is that the case. OCD, personality disorders, et cetera. People can be suicidal. What are you going to do now? Blah, blah, blah. It ends up being very complicated, and people can suffer a lot and suffer because you're acting on the wrong suppositions. Right. You can be as skeptical as you want of diagnosis, but there is such a thing as a wrong diagnosis, whether you like it or not. And that means there can be the wrong treatment. And wrong treatment won't help. So how do you get the right thing? So some of my work with mind medicine is about that. Can we develop algorithms to do evaluations of what therapists are doing, to understand what the diagnosis might be, so we can guide them to better treatment? And can we deploy that in Web3 by creating a mental health center in the metaverse? And that's what Astromoji is doing. In the background, working on all the stuff around that, because it's nice to have a mental health center, it's better to get paid for. So some of what we're doing is building that center and having this remarkable art project where everyone gets to be a stakeholder in the project and something they're familiar with, because there's art, they get something good out of it. They also get utilities. We started out with some basic stuff. We have a partnership with Wim Hof, so people can learn how to do breathing exercises in ways that are advantageous and helpful. Muse headbands are neurofeedback devices, essentially, that are commercial. So you can use them and feel better and have them work for you. And they were able to make that partnership happen before I even got there. And I went, wow, this is a competent group of individuals who can make stuff happen. Yep. And you saw similar things like, wow, these are people who are, working with actual professionals to bring actual medical care. But more importantly, the expertise to know when you need that and when you don't. Because if you don't know, you don't know. Yeah. And everything's coaching. That's the reason I reached out to Astro, is because, there can be a lot of activism, but the professionalism at that foundational level, we can't make these mistakes in this ecosystem. And so I want to stand behind a project that really holds that up as its North Star, so that you can become a case study that can be followed versus just a bunch of mind games, but really then starts to create that roadmap for professionalism within Web3. Yep. And I think the thing that's nice about it is we've seen so many rug pulls, right? Yes. In people's trust to steal their money, essentially. 100%. And because people, would be anonymous, which has its benefits, but also the downside is you don't know who they are. And who's endlessly doxed and doxable? Doctors and professionals, because they have licenses and you can't fake those. Those are undirectables. You know that I'm a doctor. And the fact that I have a medical license, you have a license of your own, means there are certain things we can't have done. Like there are no crimes I can have on my record and keep that medical license.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot do essentially anything criminal. Neither can you. You'll have that license ripped away from you as fast as you can say. So the benefit to a project of having professionals involved is not just doing it right, but there is some assurance that this is legit, because to be involved in it and have a license means it can't go do crazy stuff that's illegal, or else you lose that license.
Yeah, so, it's vetted for sure.
Well, it's a kind of vetting that you can't kind of get otherwise.
Right.
I mean, sure, there could be crooked doctors, I guess, but I don't know many who would be like, yeah, my medical license, let's blow that on having an NFT rug pull. This seems like a bad plan.
Yeah.
Remind me not to do that.
Yeah. And so like the inner, the purpose, for those that come into the ecosystem and, mint and get an NFT, kind of going back to what you're saying, is the utility so that people understand it. And so utility is about, what are the surprise and delights that could be dropped in, as well as the foundation of what you will be benefiting from, not just purchasing an image that's beautiful. Marwin did an incredible job with his artistry, but also, the Muse headbands, the Wim Hof breathing, and there's going to be much, much more, but like this bigger picture, the Astromoji really stands for your inner verse, going into your inner self and being able to do the self-improvement, the self-actualization. And when I think about like individuation, which you and I would kind of understand a psychological level, and passing through these different gates of, as you get older and you start to individualize your identity, it's really quite an interesting opportunity for people to be able to step into these like alter egos and create their own creative identity within the metaverse and really play with these different identities, which I think is a whole piece about how do we bring that self-awareness, know that we can become something more and create our future. Because we really are at this pinnacle where we talked about this on Twitter Spaces. Like, we can't do this metacognition thing where we're always looking to the past to determine our future. This is at this juncture point where it's right time, right place, and we're creating the future, right? So we're flying the pain as we build it. And with the metaverse, this mental health and wellness center, is that kind of the pinnacle, would you say, where we're going with Astro Emojis? And maybe you can kind of tie that in as well.
Like the pinnacle?
What's that?
No. So
we want to jam out in the metaverse and have our goggles on. No,
I think
it's an experience, but it's not the pinnacle.
Well, I mean, the utilities that are the first things that we do. It's a great way to prove out a concept.
Yep.
Can we, jump through the regulatory hoops to be able to deliver healthcare in a new community? And the answer we have from our lawyers is yes. So we're going to do it.
Awesome.
Is it the best place to do everything? No.
Right.
Like, are there metaverse operating rooms? Well, not yet, because surgery requires your body to be there.
Right.
Transcranial magnetic stimulation, which I'm sitting next to a machine for, requires your body to be there.
To run it. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And can we pause 1 second?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hello?
Cool. Yeah, so there are some structural things that we can and can't do, but we really are at that point. To your point, we're kind of creating that path forward bit by bit.
It's a little bit like, could you do therapy on a couch? Yes.
Right.
Can you do therapy in other places? Turns out the answer is yes, even if you didn't think it was.
Yep.
And this is a different couch.
I like that. It's a different couch. Well, I say I am your non-hypnotherapist. I'm your hypnotherapist. I am here to transform your life. No therapy on the couch, but hey, I'll rethink that.
Well, I mean, the couch wasn't necessarily, it was the first use case for therapy.
Yeah,
so.
for sure.
but I don't know that it was the best.
Right.
I don't know, sitting is the best way to do it.
Right.
And there are, I think, once you let yourself think, why do we do things the way we do?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a different way to do them without saying no immediately? But wait, hold on. And Web3 is a machine to do that faster than anything else I've ever seen before. And there's a financial built-in mechanism to make it reward people who are early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, for this project and other projects, if you're really interested in, you know, Bored Apes and their yacht clubs, and well, that did very well for people, to the tune of millions of dollars, life-changing.
Mm-hmm.
Is it gambling for some people and they lose? Yeah, sure. Could it go badly? Also, yes. Is that true of healthcare as it currently stands? Well, I wouldn't be doing this if it was perfect. I just do the thing that's already perfect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So to kind of close it up, I just really wanted to, you know, nod our heads at just kind of where we're going in the future and help people to warm up to, you know, what Astromojis is. And to your point, the Psychedelics Anonymous is also an incredible, you know, operation as well. So, you know, is there anything that, you know, you could share with us that, you know, you're most excited about as far as, you know, where you're opening up these pathways with Astromojis? And I just want to give cred to the team. It's such a great team, and I'm so excited to be a part of helping build this ecosystem of professionalism. You know, where do you see perhaps other practitioners being able to participate in the future? And then for the other side, those that are looking for a stream into this ecosystem around mental health, especially as creators. I mean, you know, I have a neurobiological situation in my brain called ADHD. And yeah, and it's like 300% more chance of being an entrepreneur, which means I'm a creator, which means we have this whole community of creators that also need to turn off their brains sometimes and understand that we all need some mental health, because this is such a booming industry right now. But tell us a little bit, you know, how you want to kind of close up. And I just wanted to give my love and thanks to you and Astromojis, and honestly, your wife as well. So,
I mean, you and me both. I think, you know, the things that brought us to want to be helpful, as we, you know, for most people who do help in healthcare, at least, we see suffering or not being as good as we could be. And we shouldn't stop at, you know, from dysfunction to barely functional should not be the trajectory we aspire to. There's, you know, there's the diagnostic and statistical manual problems. There's not a diagnostic and statistical manual of successful things. That's weird. So like just acknowledging that that's like missing a piece, I think is important. So I think essentially there needs to be the psychiatry version of sports medicine, where we focus on performance. And you know, at the same time, like healthcare right now is bad and off-putting, and people don't trust it for good reasons.
Yep.
And if we can build communities that can build trust, earn trust, and convey that trust so people feel like help might be helpful, and then make it actually responsive to what they need, we have won. And if we can do that in a way that people don't go broke getting, well, even better. And so let's do that. And that's what Astromojis is doing, building the infrastructure so that people can go do the things they do, which is get helped, be helpful, and share in the benefits of both of those things, so that we can all, you know, have the opportunity to be well, even good, even great, where we are, when we are, where we feel comfortable, and with communities that understand us.
So great. So beautiful. Well, Owen, you are, I mean, honestly, like we're just gonna have to have a separate podcast for psychedelics and a separate, I
Probably,
mean,
yeah.
right. So we'll continue this conversation, but just really wanted to open up and invite people into the project of Astromojis. I will have all the show notes on where you can find a little bit about Astromojis, and where you can also find Owen and all of his different projects. But as you can see, my friends, you know, individuals like Owen and the projects that we're involved in are really transforming the future of healthcare. And like you said, Owen, those that need to be helped and those that have a big heart to help those that need to be helped. We all need to be helped, right? We're all ushering people into this new stream of consciousness. So with that said, I'm so happy that you could join me today. Thank you so much, my friend. I'm going to let you go be with family and get some alone time here on a Sunday. So thanks again. And everybody, until next time, stay sane, get sleep, and always bring your sexy back. All right. Thanks so much.